So while people are still pouring in, I'd like to share two few updates about agility. I think most of the people might have heard, but we're still very happy to share them. Two of our portfolio companies of agility have been funded on Shark Tank. Taxi and Breedwired have been presented, and the episodes are live on the app. So I hope all of you get a chance to view them. And secondly, and the more exciting news is that Agility has launched its SEBI-approved 450 crore angel fund. And without wasting a moment, handing over the mic to Dhianu sir to take the conversation forward.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure and a very happy new year to everyone. Today we have with us Professor Viney, and it's always a privilege to talk to such intellect people and to such knowledgeable personality where I learn a lot from Professor Saab. I've been in touch with Professor Saab from last almost 2 years and learning everything so far what I am trying to implement into my PE journey. Professor Viney is a professor at Harvard University, teaching private equity, venture capital, investment banking, and project finance to the who's who of the world. And Professor Viney have appearing regularly on the list of deans as distinguished professor. And whenever I have spoken to Professor Sawhney, I have always learned something or the other of the VC world. So welcome, Professor Saab, to the Agility Group and
thank you very much.
Investors of India. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Great. So, sir, as we see more headcounts pouring in, we can just start with how are you, first of all, and how is it in US?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm in San Francisco area, right in the middle of Silicon Valley, and wonderful weather. We obviously have COVID-19 in the United States, ravaging certain parts of the country, especially in, I think, the Trumpian states. These are the people who decided not to take the vaccine, and I think they are the ones who are showing up in hospitals. But hopefully, I think we'll get over this soon. And I don't know what it's like in India, but what we understand from the medical community is that this particular variant is not as severe as the original, I think, COVID-19 spread that we saw in early 2020, lasts 5 or 7 days and subsides over time. So, so the death rate obviously is, is significantly lower. And I'm looking forward to. I was looking forward to actually coming to India. I typically do make a visit to India at this time, but I decided to postpone my visit. Given the Omicron virus related issues. But hopefully, I think as soon as things settle down, I do plan to come in the month of February. So I'll probably catch up with you guys, some of you guys in person. So
most welcome, sir.
Yeah, I'm ready to go, and let's start.
Thank you, sir. Most welcome, sir. We would love to host you in person as well with, as many people as you will allow and the government of India will allow. India, the scene is still pretty okay. The hospitalization, it's not like the last year, the COVID scene, but they have weekend lockdowns and evening lockdowns. So crowd is there, but still the the situation is, I would say, under control in India. And I think, as you said, the strain is not that strong as Delta. So going away in 5 days, but it's happening a lot. Unluckily, Prashant sir is also affected with the with COVID.
Yeah,
So
Prashant, how are you feeling, by the way? How are you doing?
Much better, sir, than yesterday, but it will take its time, sir.
Okay,
So,
okay. Are you on some kind of medication or something?
yes, sir, the medication has started. So the report
Okay,
just came in
okay.
last
Did
night.
your test results come in? Are you
Yeah,
positive?
yeah. Yes,
Oh,
sir. I'm,
you are positive. Okay.
yes, sir. So that's
All
what I
right.
was telling Dhianuji, that I'm so positive it's showing in the reports also now.
and I was joking that we need more positive people, but not in COVID. Thank you, sir. Sir, I think we have decent headcounts. The number we were expecting, it's almost crossed that number. So let's start with, sir. I mean, the most burning question: how is US prospect on Indian startup ecosystem? How is US perceiving India startup ecosystem?
Okay, so India is not a new territory for the US-based VC investors. Uh, the country has seen, I think, a dramatic escalation uh, in dollar terms that has been invested in the last year and a half, and I think the growth doubled, as far as the unicorn count is concerned. And that's, I think, spurred and attracted a lot of attention here in the U.S. And as soon as I think news started to trickle from the Indian press and other reliable financial and governmental resource sources that India is not only receiving a significant amount of dollars, VC dollars, but is also uh, uh, you know, uh, having a home run as far as the unicorns are concerned. I think I in fact sitting here in the United States, I started to receive lots and lots of phone calls, from hedge fund managers and from pension fund, managers and institutional investors who typically have always shied away from India. And I mean, I'm talking about large investors. I mean, I know so many of them, personally, because a large number of them appeared as a guest speaker in my class at Harvard. So, and all of them were basically asking me, what is going on in India? So, uh, so I think there is those who sort of invest in India, which is the world's second most populous country in the world. I think I basically cite a few reasons for this upsurge, and one of the main ones, I suppose, is that the country's is witnessing a maturing startup ecosystem that's moved sort of well beyond just the consumer app cycle. And and another one, of course, is the booming stock market, and that, I think, has shown investors a path to liquidity that's not always been there. And so we are right now really sort of finally closing the loop of investments, exits, and sort of wealth creation. Uh, and and the country risk, I think, parameters for India have also witnessed significant improvement. I think the well-publicized GDP growth rate and a slight improvement in the credit rating, and a reversal of the policies that I think the Modi government has put in place as regards tax regime. I think the Ken case, which I think attracted a lot of adverse publicity for India many months ago when they were going to take charge of Indian assets abroad, I think was resolved very expeditiously by by the Modi regime, and I think that was a very sensible step. I think a number of these factors, I think, have contributed to U.S. Adopting a very positive posture towards the India country risk. And with that, I think we are going to see a very, very large inflows of FDI investments and VC money and private equity money and so on and so forth. So,
can you mute everyone, please? Sorry, sir. Sir, you are on mute.
oh, so you couldn't hear anything?
Just from the last 15 seconds.
Ah, okay. Oh, so it went to mute on its own. Okay. So, for this, the other thing, for the second time in the last 6 quarters, total investments in India, especially in the third quarter of 2021, outpaced that in China. It's like 16.2 billion coming into the startup ecosystem in Q3 compared to 12 billion in China. That's never happened before, which is obviously a very positive sign. So overall, I think the country surpassed a record level of investments in the year 2021, touching an all-time high of almost about $42 billion. And that funding, a record number of uniforms, staggering 42, more than the total of 2020 and 2019 combined, I think put India on the world map as far as the VC scene is concerned. So it's all good stuff as far as the U.S. investors are concerned. I must confess that we are still not seeing, big money coming. Like when I say big money, I mean, the pension funds and who control a very large chunk of the liquidity in this country. I think that's still holding off. But over time, I think they will come. And with that, I think India probably will not only get 40 billion, but they probably will get 400 billion, in my opinion, in the next 5 years into the VC space. I mean, that is the kind of potential I think the country has right now.
Great, sir. Sir, I mean, the way everybody is perceiving India, and today, especially today, Mr. Modi's, PM Modi is meeting 150 plus startups in India. And Piyush Goyal, our minister, he said, let's target 75 unicorns this year. So definitely, I think our government is also helping and pushing the entrepreneurship drive into the country. So, sir, are the US funds entering India with a long-term thesis, or is it just, opportunistic approach that, we can just enter now and exit as early as possible, sitting on their, extra dry powder, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, the reason for the spike in venture investments are sort of multifaceted. And but one can certainly start with the booming public markets, as I said earlier on. And that has become much more welcoming, I think, to the high growth tech companies than the past years, when some investing rules and the pervading investment environment kept many tech startups, especially unprofitable ones, sort of on the sidelines. And many large tech companies have reached a size where going to public markets become a viable option. The food delivery company Zomato's IPO this year in the summer of 2021, followed by Paytm, Policy Bazaar, Nykaa following the course. A lot of these companies have become large and can now list domestically. This is not just like China. It will not be. It's probably we are going to be following China's route. Will not be stopping here. So in a sense, the US investors have indeed developed a long-term thesis for making an entry and to India. And just recently, you'll be quite surprised that I was doing some research. And today itself, I read in TechCrunch that a US-based fund called Red Blue invested $28 million in a company called eWage. And I want to tell you a little bit about that company um, because I just picked that up. I do get
Sure.
these emails, and I want to tell you something very interesting about this company. Just 1 second.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So eWage, raised $28 million for for commercial EV vehicles. It's a startup, I think, based in I think in outside Delhi, and so the flagship vehicle is a 1-ton truck that was designed for India's. In partnership with Amazon, and Amazon has placed an order for 1,000 trucks or something. And so this company is also going to manufacture, in addition to commercial vehicles, I think cars and buses and 3-wheelers and so on and so forth. And so you can imagine that this particular company that invested $28 million called Red Blue, it's called the Red Blue Fund out of United States, never ever came to India before. And that, I think, is largely triggered by the climate change policies in India, the escalating fuel costs. And I think the electric vehicle, I think, has become or is going to become a reality in India. And I think the US investors, I think, are smart enough to figure this out. And they're putting an early bet, I think, on this particular company. I'm sure they got this particular investment at a pretty decent valuation, and they came pretty, at an early stage. And so we are seeing some very smart money come in to India, in some of these specific climate change, agri, and all these types of sectors, which where I think the Indian, investors sometimes are shy to invest. So, so I think to answer your question, whether they have in turn developed a long-term thesis, yes, they have, and so there's absolutely no doubt, and the reasons I think I've already given you. I think country risk, I think, has always been paramount. Concern for the U.S. investors, especially the relationship, with the neighboring countries, with China and Pakistan, and so on and so forth. And I think they've all figured out that that's probably a lot of noise on the side, and they're not really sort of taking that very seriously. And I think this very impressive GDP number, I think has been quite a revelation, I think, for the U.S. investors, and I think they are, I think, probably preparing to put a very sizable amount. I, in fact, met with the chairman of a very large private equity fund the other day, who they already have a presence in India, and he said that they are going to be increasing their stake in India by 10 times. So, that's a very sizable fund.
Very sizable.
It's probably one of the largest funds, I think, in the world. And so the point I'm making is that this is not I think, an opportunistic move. This is a strategic move, and it's long term, and it's there to stay.
Thank you.
India also, you have to remember, is the leading emerging market country in the world today. Given the some hiccups that we are seeing, regulatory hiccups that we are seeing in China.
So that's what my next question goes to, sir. So I think, when Beijing, China regulatory body cracked down on tech companies, especially they killed one at tech company. So I think that has taken a lot of sheen out of, or appeal out of, China for the investors. And as obvious, India is benefited from this phenomena and actually became the breakout movement for the country startups. That's the reason maybe we have seen, almost 50% of all startups becoming unicorn in 2021. And both pandemic and regulatory bodies of China have added the fuel to that growth in India. What is your view on that, sir? And is this boom for India really sustainable, do you think?
Yeah, it's indeed true that some of this new money coming in India is because the course correction triggered by the regulatory crackdown in China. But given India's, I think, buoyant public markets and the rapid adoption of online services in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think has added to the exuberance around the Indian startups. So there's a lot more liquidity, sort of sloshing around the ecosystem, and some of which is indeed destined for India, and which is now a compelling story. To answer your question, the boom is indeed sustainable. There's about $6 trillion that was injected by the Biden regime.
Can you mute, please, Prachi?
Mm.
Sorry, sir.
And Trump and Biden regime in the last 12 months or 18 months, or since the beginning of pandemic. And that $6 trillion, is trying to find home. And to give you an example, I'm here in the San Francisco area, and I actually just moved into a new home. And in order to actually move.
Sorry, you gone on mute. Sorry, sir. You moved into San Francisco, where we missed you.
So what I'm saying is that when I moved to San Francisco, I've been in San Francisco for 2 years, but I moved into, a new location in Marin County now, and I've got myself a new home. And what happened is that in order to actually buy a home, when I went there to bid, for the house that I bid for, it had 26 bids within 24 hours. And I had to design a very unique escalation clause in my bid to actually win the house. And so the point that I'm really trying to make is that we have just so much liquidity right now. And that's the same case, also, with all these investors who have cashed out on their VC investments in the last 12 months. They're sitting on a pile of cash, and that's trying to find home. So India, I think, also has over 850 million internet users, and that's also catching a lot of attention. 11 startups got listed in 2021, and 42 startups joined the Unicorn Club. And that, I think, is also making, news all over the world. So the investors and venture funds have received billions of dollars, in payments in past couple of years, following series of bumper public listings. And, given the low interest rate environment, the US investors need to redeploy this capital, and they decided to, apportion and allocate some of this to the venture space in India. So many of those who had a China strategy And when China tightened the screw, markets like India benefited. But I would say that that's just part of the story. It's not just because of China that we are getting this money. I think it's because of the strong fundamentals. I think that India right now has built around its economy and its tax regime and its regulatory regime and so on and so forth, which I think is making a lot of difference. I think India has also gone up on their ease of doing business indices and so on and so forth. More needs to be done. Much more needs to be done. But I think one day, whenever exchange control, I think, is done away with, we will then become, I think, at par with the most advanced countries, which we already are, very, very soon. So I understand we have about $700 billion in reserves now, and soon going to cross maybe, a trillion or something. And if that happens, that will put India in a very strong position. You can imagine that. Remember what I said earlier on. The big money is still not in. The big money is still waiting and watching, but I think they are running out of options. I think given whatever has happened in China, I think that country has been blackballed for a while. And I think India indeed will benefit from that.
Thank you. So as you said, that big money is still waiting. Uh, which large VC, according to you, which large VC firm from United States is, finally taking the plunge after waiting for long? And why do you think they waited for such long period? Why didn't they come before to India? Is there any point of view of yours on this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, around 250 funds made debut investments in India, about 70, maybe more than the previous year. And among the newest are Andreessen Horowitz, TCV, Vitruvian Partners, GSV Ventures, Clymer Perkins, the Silicon Valley Fund that actually left India in 2014 is back in the fray. Andreessen backed a company called Crypto Startup, a coin switch Kuber. Vitruvian Partners backed logistics startup called Porter, and TCV invested in fantasy sports startup called Dream 11, to give you an example. I want to talk about a little bit about Andreessen. Andreessen is a fund which was formed here in the Silicon Valley, just a few miles away from where I live, in the year 2009 by the founders of Netscape, Mark Andreessen and Horowitz. They started this VC fund in 2009 with $300 million. And now they have $18 billion under management. They have just finished raising, I think, about $5 billion. So the point I'm really making is that this is, just this is just some of the names that I've given you, and they waited this long, given the flawed tax regime, the unclear and confusing exit rules, non-existent public markets, unfavorable, rules impairing, ease of doing business in India, and the list goes on and on. So I mean, so all these are some of the things that kept them at bay for a while. And those, I think, concerns are being mitigated now over time. So we, as I said, we will see, big pension funds and maybe lining up for India soon. I think we need to maybe do some more homework, on the Indian side. We need to loosen up. I understand that SEBI takes about a year to register a VC fund in India, and we here in the United States can complete VC fund registration of $150 million with 100 investors in less than 30 days. No questions asked. So, I mean, this is, we probably, as I said, we have a long way to go. But India deserves to get a lot more than $42 billion in the VC space. I mean, the quality of entrepreneurs, the quality of business schools and engineering schools, and the potential that we have in the BC and D-class towns and our rural sector, and the adoption rate and the connectivity is just mind-boggling.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your viewpoint. And so there is one particular question which I always thought, I'll ask somebody of your stature. Do you think the kind of importance at the moment India is getting for not just for the funds or startups, but also if you see large large organization, they are keeping Indian origin person as their CEO, like Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella, or many big large organizations are. Will that also help India in any way, do you think? What's your viewpoint on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, no question about that. I mean, I think the Indian diaspora, the Indians in the United States are all over the place. I mean, they're practically ruling the country. Biden has 51 Indian in his administration. The entire medical community is dominated with Indian doctors, and I mean, the tech field is all dominated by Indians, and people like Nadella and so on and so forth. They have made a mark, and they have brought obviously India into the limelight. There's absolutely no question. I would say that they, I think they're probably, a lot of these people actually live here in this town where I am, and I can tell you that we often talk about this here. The potential for India is just absolutely mind-boggling, and we have not, I think, scratched the surface as yet of what is yet to come.
Thank you, sir. And I'm sure because you are sitting in the Makkah of VC world, or the Makkah of whatever we call the startups or whatever. Harvard is actually treated like that. So my next question is toward if you have idea on how much VC money has come to India this year, and how many new deals were concluded in the VC space, of course, including the unicorns.
I'll do better than that. I'm going to give you some very interesting statistics on the India scene. Being a professor, I do my homework whenever I go for a talk like this. So, in fact, I was able to compile statistics as of December 31st, 2021. So the numbers that you're going to be getting from me are right on the dot. Only 10 days old. So 1,436 startups were launched in 2021. 1,583 startup funding deals were recorded in 2021. 108 deals worth $100 million and above were placed in 2021. Bangalore, startup hub with maximum funding deals in 2021. So it's the number one spot for the country as far as the VC activity is concerned. 2,487 investors participated in startup funding in 2021. 206 M&As were recorded in 2021. $42 billion were raised by Indian startups in 21. 32 million was the average ticket size in 2021. Fintech sector received the maximum funding deals in 2021. $6.2 billion was raised by startup-focused funds in 2021. 11 Indian startups got listed in 2021, and 42 Indian startups entered the Unicorn Club in 2021.
Wow. I think I also didn't have this much accurate data, sir. Thank you so much.
I'd be quite happy to share that with you, and you can share it with your participants.
Sure, sir. Sure. Definitely. Would love to do that. And the numbers are definitely phenomenal. So as you said, 11 startups listed on Indian Stock Exchange. I think it was a distant reality, and now it's just become reality for many people to do the public listing, for many startups to do the public listing, unlike how it was a few years ago. And as we all are aware, many startups were thinking of listing in US, changed their mind and listed in India. But sir, with that, I want your viewpoint, because we have on the one hand, we have Nykaa, which is doubled up from the IPO price of 1150 to 2000. And then we have Paytm, which tanked almost 50% from 2100 to 1050. And also some beating to Zomato as well recently. What is your opinion? Should be the strategy for listing a startup going forward? And who do you think the potential new names expected to hit the market this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good question. So, let's start with like Paytm. Okay, so Paytm, Macquarie, which is an Australian investment bank, sort of termed this country as a sort of a cash guzzler, and set up a price target of 1,200 just when this company was listed. And then in 2 months later, they actually revised the target to 900. And the company, I think, is now quoted at 1,050. Paytm has never posted a profit. There's been a consistent decline in their take rate, commission, and charges for processing payments. The company categorically says that it may not be profitable anytime soon. The overly optimistic and aggressive investment bankers and the senior management like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, I suppose, are partially responsible for this debacle. But we obviously, need to be more realistic and apply rules of prudence. Just to give you an example, Paytm's valuation when it was listed was at about 26 times estimated price to sales. Okay, not EBITDA, not anything else, but price to sales for the financial year 2023. 26 times. Price to sales is the ratio that they apply to value this company at the time of the IPO. And this and that is when profitability remains elusive. And most fintech players globally trade around 0.3 or 0.5 times price to sales growth ratios. 0.5 versus 26. I mean, that is the boo-boo that they made when they actually valued this company. So in my opinion, the 1050 number that you are seeing on the stock market, I think is on the higher side. So, so all that I can say is that, the pandemic led to huge technology adoption in the country that got price into valuations of many technology companies at escalated levels, and we might see a downward trend. WeWork in the US is a typical example. SoftBank lost a ton of money, and largely on account of the same thing. SoftBank didn't do their homework, and they had to write off a huge amount for WeWork. So you need to be more realistic and apply rules of prudence. And you don't have to be, like a rocket scientist to sort of come up with the right valuation. But I think the company's management or the CEO or whatever, I think either put too much pressure on the investment banks, or I don't know what really happened there, but they were probably better off postponing the IPO until they were, closer to profitability. But they all want to replicate Amazon, which is, not the same story as this. They think as Amazon can be where it is today, despite making losses, we can rule the roost as well and follow the same example. But Paytm is no Amazon, and hopefully, I think this one solitary case will not set the markets reeling, and hopefully we will, I think, have more responsible investment banks going into market and underwriting these issues and exercise caution. As regards the names of new names, I have a long list here, and I don't know if I can go through it, but there's about 40 new names, and if you want me to go through, I can.
If you can go top 5 or maybe 7 names.
Yeah, I mean, I have month-wise breakdown. January, you have Digit. February, you have Investor, and if Inframarket. April, you have Cred, ShareChat, Gupshop, Misho, PharmEasy, Urban Company. May, you have Zeta, Moglix. June, you have Browser Stack. July, you have Blackbuck Business. August, you have Bharat Pay, Upgrads, at Work, Grofers. September, you have Apna, MPL, Vedantu. October, you have CoinSwitch, Uber, Rebel Foods, MobileQuick, Cardeko. November, you have MyGlam, CureFit, Slice, Spinny, Mensa, No Broker. In December, you have Piston Cure, Global Bees, Mama Earth. I don't know how many of them are actually, going to come to the market, but these are the companies that are, about 40 of them, preparing to list in 2022.
So there are so many questions in the chat. So I would request you, you have already given us some time for the question and answers from the investors. So you can save your questions or type your questions in the chat. We can ask Professor Saab at the end of this session. I have just few questions left. I hope that's okay with everyone. So sir, now moving on to the sector, I think the latest trend is moving toward the SaaS-based products. In your view, is the tech sector footprint increasing in the public market? I mean, vis-a-vis the product consumer-based companies or D2C companies, or I mean, according to you, do you think will India eventually become exporter of software products instead of, what we were known for as software service country?
Okay,
What's your view on
good question. Yeah, so SaaS is a way of delivering applications via the internet as a service. Instead of installing and maintaining software, you simply access it via the internet from yourself. And it's a software is a distribution model which a cloud provider hosts applications and makes them available to end users over the internet. So I think this is probably the way to go for the Indian tech sector. And fortunately for us, we have had an amazing beginning with a company called Freshworks. And I want to spend a few minutes talking about that company. Freshworks raised $1 billion on NASDAQ on September 22nd at a $12 billion market valuation, $43.40. And this 11-year-old company was basking in its glory. And I want to tell you the whole story about this company. I think it's worthwhile for us to spend for a couple of minutes on this. So there's a gentleman called Mathuru Bhutam, who moved back to Chennai from Austin, Texas. And the shipping company broke his television. He took to an online forum to vent his frustrations with the rigmarole of claiming insurance. And shortly after people engaged with his post, the CEO of the company apologized and his insurance money was deposited in the bank. The experience gave Mathrubootham the idea of building a new kind of help desk. And he realized social media was changing the dynamics of the customer service industry. He had prior experience having built 4 help desks already and called the new one Fresh Desk or Freshworks. And he gave up his position as vice president of product management at a software company called Zoho to start the firm. So from the get-go, he wanted to create a world-class platform for business to engage with customers and employees. And he wasn't trying to make $1 billion. In mid-2018, the company clocked $100 million in annual recurring revenue and entered the coveted unicorn club with $1 billion in valuation. In March 2019, the company moved its headquarters to St. Mateo, which is very close to where I live, in March 2019, to closer to its biggest rival, Salesforce. It's a big company, to chase bigger and faster growth in the Silicon Valley. A year later, the pandemic served as an unexpected booster shot as business found an increased need to digitize. By February of 2021, ARR grew 40% year over year to reach $300 million. The company now has 52,500 customers in more than 120 countries. That combination of scale and growth is hard, and what makes it even rarer is the fact that we have done it efficiently, is what this guy said. So the company was, able to generate $25 million in free cash flow in the last 12 months. Company has been shrinking its losses drastically. And currently, Freshworks employs 4,200 people. 3,800 of them are in India. And it foresees more job opportunities in the aftermath of the public debut. And after hiring, the IPO funds will be used to invest in research and development and grow the business core markets. So they're really on their way to build an iconic product company to come out of India, which India has been lacking for many, many years. So he's a trailblazer. He's shown the country the path, and all we have to do is to just follow him, follow his the blueprint, and his secret sauce is already publicized. It's not a secret anymore. So that is SaaS. So I think SaaS is the way to go, and SaaS-based companies, enjoy, superior valuations vis-a-vis any other segment of the market, and which is what I would ask you to do if you're making investment. Look around for SaaS-based companies, as much as you can.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the suggestion. I would definitely. Sir, one sector which I personally, like is fintech, and have not yet invested in any fintech company. What is the potential, role of this fintech in this venture space going forward? And if you can, just elaborate your viewpoint on this, because fintech is something which is, Paytm, as we all can see, was the poster boy of Indian startup ecosystem or fintech industry leader. And now, what do you think? What's your viewpoint on the fintech going forward?
Yeah. So India has the highest fintech adoption rate globally. India is amongst the fastest growing fintech markets in the world. Of the 2,100 fintechs that exist in India today, over 67% have been set up in the last 5 years. The Indian fintech industry is currently valued dollars, and it's estimated to touch about $150 billion by 2025. And from January to August 2021, the digital transactions total roughly 6 trillion Indian rupees. The value of fintech transactions expected to rise from 66 billion to about 138 billion in 2023 at a compounded average growth rate of about 20%. And as of December 2021, India has over 17 fintech businesses that have achieved unicorn status. And some of the names are, LendingCraft, Instamp, Mojo, Razorpay, Paytm, Policybazaar, Shiksha Finance, Pine Labs, Zest Money. So fintech sort of spans education, retail banking, nonprofit fundraising, investment management, and much more. So basically, according to BCG, India is well positioned to achieve a fintech sector valuation of $160 billion by 2025, implying that $100 billion in incremental value creation potential exists right now in this segment. So it's a $100 billion opportunity for India. UPI and Bheem have put India on the world map. RBI has pushed the growing use of, I think, electronic payments to establish a true cashless society, and they've done a pretty good job. The growth, I think, in fintech has been aided by a number of factors, including the growing availability of smartphones, increased internet access, and high-speed connectivity. So demonetization and GST have, have also created a substantial growth opportunity for fintech. projects all over the country. And COVID-19 has hastened the digitization with contactless and cashless payments to encourage social distancing. So digital payments have become sort of a way of life.
Transaction हो गया.
Can you mute Pallavi? Yes, sir. Sorry. Pallavi, can you mute everyone, please?
Mm-hmm. So digital payments become a way of life, and 15 million new customers in the last 12 months. Fantastic experience has triggered massive adoption. Paytm, PhonePe, MobiKwik are the flag bearers. Facebook and Reliance, I think, are expected to significantly change the India digital payment space, with the particular focus on 2 and 3 tier cities and the rural areas. So I think that's my take on fintech.
Thank you. That's great, sir. I think that's the way it should be, because India is all about 150 crore people. And it's also about, we were at one point of time the largest economy of the world, probably touching 40% odd in 1600s. So my next question is on the investors. So investors are trying to get on funding rounds, but it is become more difficult and more expensive. I mean, the valuations, everything is gone different, particularly this year. What is your viewpoint on this subject and how to handle this challenge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very tough question. The tech disruption, has become very broad-based. Both, both interests picking up basically, in a variety of sectors, investors are finding it difficult to get into funding rounds in the US and also in India, and it's expensive too. So the escalated valuations are serious barriers, significantly enhancing the risk for investors. All rounds are attracting more interest. That is especially true of seed, which is due to low price threshold, and it's become more appealing. 10 years ago, no one had, knew the term sheet was. So as wealth grows in the country, vast amount of venture dollars will still come from outside the country, especially when it comes to large rounds led by, the big boys like Tiger Global and TPG. And so, these could change as more successful entrepreneurs become part of the venture capital world. Foreign investments are likely to increase in India, especially as China has ramped up, the regulatory, regulatory piece, which is causing, I think, investors to reevaluate their positions. So these investors now are looking at other alternatives, and this is likely to benefit India. Coming back to, what can be done to combat the situation of escalated valuations is a hard nut to crack, because it is the VC firms themselves that are actually fueling the fire. And I want to give you a very interesting example of what has happened very recently in a particular transaction. And that transaction, in fact, happened in the US, actually right here in the Silicon Valley. And the venture capital firm was Andreessen themselves, Andreessen led a round of funding for a company called social audio app called Clubhouse at $1 billion. Okay. I don't know if you guys have ever used that, but so they are the ones who basically provided them, with the initial funding, and they valued the company at $1 billion. 3 months later, the same firm, Andreessen, led another financing that is 3 months later that quadrupled the startup's valuation, even as mobile data showed that fewer people were downloading the app. So that's happening with companies of the caliber of Andreessen. So I don't know who to blame and what to say about, the other smaller players. So the big boys like, SoftBank and Andreessen, as well, I think, are fueling the fire. Escalated valuations are hard not to crack. And I suppose the only thing that you can really do is make a case to your founders that, look, there is more than just valuation, and there's this thing called value add piece that they should be paying attention to, and looking at the long-term growth prospects of the company and the value that your firm can add as an investor, rather than just look at dollars and cents. I wish I could tell you a little bit more. With the recent example of Clubhouse, this is a very, very, very difficult situation.
That is what is happening, sir. Earlier, D2C companies were available for investment at much cheaper multiples. But now companies like, 10 Brands, Go, or Global Bees, they started picking up brands at exuberant multiples, and they started buying the entire company like Thrasio model. So India is just witnessing the next wave of, buying or kind of, acquiring companies in a whole different way, which never happened in India. So they are opening. So my last question is toward the benefit of all the viewers. So what are the global predictions for 2022 in regards to mega trends in our space of venture capital? And if you can throw some light on that so that everybody can benefit with the understanding of the international marketplace.
Okay. So 11 mega trends, globally, starting with agriculture tech. So this precision agriculture tech will experience record M&A activity. Second, artificial intelligence and machine learning. VC funding for data preparation platforms will exceed that of model development tools. Third trend, climate tech, carbon negative technologies, especially direct air capture, represent a long-term mega trend that will drive significant VC investments in 2022. Enterprise health tech, number 4. Personalized medicine startups will receive a record level of VC investment in 2022. 5, food tech, record VC funding will fuel significant widespread adoption gains in fermented proteins in 2022, with concentration on animal-free dairy products. Information security, number 6. Security incumbents will drive M&A and password authentication. InsurTech, it's insurance. Incumbent acquisitions will drive a strong increase in InsurTech M&A activity. Internet of Things will produce a public listing with over $1 billion in the exit value. Mobility tech, mobility sector focused VC and PE firms will raise outsized funds in 2022. Retail health tech will focus on building technology that can increase the frequency of low-touch interactions between patients and providers. And last but not the least, supply chain commercial delivery vehicles will shift to Electric in 2022, and I gave you a live example of the company based in Noida that received $28 million in funding recently from Red Blue, US-based VC firm.
Thank you, sir. I have exhausted my questions, but we have so many questions in that chat from the investors. So we can, if you allow us some time, some more time.
Please go ahead.
Pallavi, would you like to come and?
Yes. Yes, I will. Chinmay sir, I'll come to you just in a moment. This question is from Anirban sir. He's saying, we clearly see two Indias, especially post-pandemic. On one hand, we see rising unemployment and income inequality. On the other hand, we see a record number of unicorns in a year. As a VC community, how does one reconcile these two Indias? And should we be worried about the potential bubble?
A very interesting question. So, is the question about unemployment? Is that what the
so how do we reconcile the two, the unemployment and
so there's
inequality?
Correct. So India's unemployment problem is legacy based. It's not something that's resulted just from the pandemic. We as a country have been underperforming, in terms of industrialization, agriculture, education, transportation, infrastructure, everywhere. So that underperformance, which is a legacy-based issue, obviously cannot be resolved, overnight. The country requires massive amounts of capital inflows to mitigate some of these issues. And unfortunately, I think our regulators and our governments and our politicians haven't really moved speedily and expeditiously to tackle these issues in the last 30, 40, 20, whatever years. I think the Modi government, is doing definitely a better job. But I wouldn't say that they're spectacular. So because they are resource constrained, and they also, are having to combat corruption, bureaucracy, mindset of the business community, which is entrenched into tax evasion and making a fast buck, and so on and so forth. So several of these are cultural issues. So governments and regulators cannot solve all of them. But one thing that's for sure that we know, that in order to alleviate these problems, and they all sort of, ultimately translate themselves into unemployment, is where you do need some serious capital. We are cash constrained. We are capital constrained. We need trillions of dollars to be spent in this company to get our, farming community, our rural sector out of poverty and so on and so forth. And so money is in short supply. And that, I think, item has received a sort of, not a preferred treatment. It has, we need to do a lot better than what we are doing right now. We are, moving on all fronts, but not enough. China is a real example. We need to open the country up. We haven't opened this country up as of now, even today. Our financial markets, I am a banker by profession. I spent the first 25 years of my life as a banker. I joined Harvard only in 2009. And so finance is my specialty. We we have too many rules and regulations. We have failed to make the country attractive enough to attract, big money. If China could do it, why couldn't we? We have much better chance to attract foreign capital than China did. I mean, that's a communist country. It's a it's a it's a it's a dictatorship, and 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 we are probably a thriving democracy of our only kind in the world, maybe even better than the United States if you compare right now. The elections in India are held free and fair, in an immaculate fashion. India's like a role model for the world. But why is it that we haven't been able to attract capital, and while China has, or some of these other countries have? And that's an issue to be attacked. And it has nothing to do with unicorns and with venture capital and so on and so forth. Venture capital can certainly help. Venture capital created 6 lakh jobs in India recently. Where we have 50,000, 60,000 startups in India right now, the highest in the world. So the point I'm making is that we are starting to make some dents. So there is no dichotomy, or there's no sort of, in what you're pointing out, that there are 2 separate issues. They are not in conflict with each other. Venture capital is designed to alleviate the unemployment problem. So, but it's not. You can't solve all the problems with venture capital. You need to move on other fronts too. You need to, as I said, you need to attack on a task force basis. The government bureaucracy, the mindset of the bureaucrats, for them to take, prompt and expedient decisions. Clean up, the corruption piece, and open up the markets. It is so difficult. We have a few very good ministers, and I see some videos on YouTube from our infrastructure minister, and he's doing a fantastic job. We had, about 50 of those guys. This country would be a different place to reckon with. So that's all that I can say at this point of time, sir. I wish I could tell you more.
Thank you.
Next question is from Rakesh, sir. He's asking, when do we see India breaking out? We have been talking about India's potential since the late 80s, yet the per capita income is 1/4 of China. What needs to happen for this breakthrough growth?
Yeah, I mean, I just talked about the same subject, just now in my previous response, and what needs to happen is what I just said. Open up the financial markets, clean up the bureaucracy, rejuvenate the tax regime, okay? Educate, remove all the bottlenecks that you have, in decision making. I want to give you an example, personal example of mine, of my exposure to India. And from that, you'll be able to judge where we are. I have a home in New Delhi, and I try and come to India at least once a year, spend a few months there. And in early part of 2019, I came to India, and I was horrified to see, the pollution levels in Delhi. And I walked up to Amitabh Kant, the Niti Aayog, and one fine morning, and I had a long chat with him. And I told him that, sir, we should do something about this pollution. It's damaging our reputation worldwide, and it's you are not going to be able to attract any talent into the country. And so many of my friends don't even want to buy a ticket for India because of what's going on here in the city, and and it's also hurting our dollar inflows and FDIs and so on and so forth. So he said, okay. So he said, Vinay, so what do you think we should do? And I said, well, I mean, I will come and work with you in your office pro bono for 90 days, and I'll try and help you out. And that's exactly, sir, what I did.
Thank you.
Next day, Amitabh Kant gave me an office next to his on Parliament Street. His office is located there. It is the old Planning Commission office. And I started to work on coming up with a plan to eradicate pollution in Delhi. And I worked day and night, and I was there till started on 12th of March of 2019 and worked there till 29th of May. And I produced a report, a document, a PowerPoint, and I gave a huge presentation at Niti Aayog, which was attended by all the big boys in the bureaucracy. And I got a huge applause. And but the end result was that none of the actions or the strategies or whatever I'd laid out, nothing was acted on.
Nothing.
No money was allocated. And it just, it's probably lying, the report is lying there, catching dust. I don't know. But, it's Mr. Modi, I think, is frankly, doing his best. He's alone. He's like a lone ranger. And, but we are also, starved for talent in our government. I happened to visit multiple offices, during the course of my due diligence on coming up with interventions for pollution control related measures, and I met with senior officers at the secretary and joint secretary level in all the ministries, and I was horrified, to see the indifference and callousness displayed by them as far as pollution in Delhi was concerned. They heard me and they offered me, tea and coffee and biscuits, and they said, yeah, sure, but they were not willing to make any amends. They were not willing to make decisions. There is the whole government machinery is frozen. There are a few people, good people, and you see them on YouTube very often, like Piyush Goyal and Mr. Natkari, Gadkari, and so on and so forth, and maybe some more. But that's not all. I mean, all these. It's not a answer that I can give, in this forum. Yeah. We probably need another session for this. I wish I could help.
Thank you, sir. So just because we have so many questions lined up, Pallavi, are you there?
Yes, I am. Chinmay, sir, please go ahead. You've raised your hand for quite some time now.
Oh, yeah. Now I'm able to unmute. Hello. Thank you, Pallavi. Hello, Professor. This is Chinmay here. Good to see you.
I know you.
Yes. It's always great to hear from you, simply because of the latest data and the real life, latest information that you share with us, which is very difficult to find even on internet. So thank you so much for that, Professor. My question is around due diligence. You shared certain examples of overvalued startups like WeWork and also Paytm and Clubhouse. However, recently, I'm sure you would have heard about Elizabeth Holmes. I was shocked when I got to hear about, now she was like a sensation, 19-year-old, media started calling her Steve Jobs, youngest billionaire, but it was a fraud. And we had investors like Rupert Murdoch and I think former Secretary or US Secretary of State investing. So what happens during that process when they make that decision? Are they like fear of missing out and they bypass the due diligence? So would like to hear your thoughts on that, Professor.
Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth was a 19-year-old girl when she joined Stanford, and Stanford is just a few miles away from where I am. And she started to work on this startup and so on and so forth. And then she got friendly with somebody, and between the two of them, they basically cooked books and cooked, their tech piece. And basically, they were being fraudulent. I mean, when you are out to defraud your investors, it's a no-win game. So it's not that the investors, were negligent in vetting the deal. It just so happens that these two founders were too clever for the investors, and they sort of did not reveal, the path to coming up with the whatever vaccine or whatever blood results or tests that they were coming up with, and they defrauded their investors. It's a very simple case of fraud. And so you cannot detect fraud in due diligence. It's almost impossible. So, and by the way, she's going to go to jail for a very long time. She has been convicted. Jury has convicted her, and she's awaiting sentence. She'll probably be behind bars for at least 20 years.
More than that, sir.
Mm.
And, if you see her history, I think it was somewhere related to that Enron as well, the fraud. So I think we should not talk about her. Let's move on to the next question.
Moving on to the next question then. This one's from Vivek Batra, sir. He's asking, how does one arrive at sensible valuation of a startup at any given time?
Can you repeat the question?
Valuation, sir. How do you value a startup?
How do you?
Sensible. Very difficult.
You should take my course.
Absolutely. It's a very difficult
It
question.
begins on June 20th.
Agree.
There's 14 sessions or 3 hours each. So, how do you, that's not something that I can tell you in a few words, but I can try. But how do you evaluate a startup? Yeah. Okay. I suppose you start with the founders, and make sure that you have a smart set of founders overseeing the effort. And then you also, I suppose, want to make sure that they have, the right tech piece, the technology. So you need to thoroughly, look under the hood and check the tech piece, the one that they are developing, whether it is actually capable of transforming the world and whether they can actually they have some competitive advantage. If it's just a run-of-the-mill type of a technology and it's capable of being replicated elsewhere fairly quickly, then that's not a startup that you would want to invest into. And the next item that you would want to look at is the size of the market and the product. And is this product differentiated enough to catch the attention of the customers, and is it capable, as the product and the market is capable of being scaled beyond belief? Is it can the product go regional? Does it have a countrywide appeal, or is it just meant for the neighborhood? And then you also obviously need to look at the valuation. You don't want to invest into a startup which is has overly exaggerated valuation. These days, that is an issue that you are confronted with. There is very little that you can really do at such an early stage in venture capital space, because the only thing that you can really do at the seed stage or at an early stage is evaluate and ascertain the credentials and the efficacy of the management team and the founders and the idea that they have. So it has to pass your smell test, because you obviously cannot rely on a set of financial projections that are churned out, because those projections have no meaning at all. And so the size of the market, appealability, and whether the product is going to has some differentiation and so on and so forth are some of the things. But I would strongly recommend that you should talk to Dhianu, and maybe he can pass on a copy of the syllabus and sign up for the course. And I'd be happy to then spend 7 weeks with you and maybe go through 14 odd cases and some. It's a 3-hour class, and you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely, sir. I think most of us might just sign up. My apologies. I just looked at the time, so we're at the 11:30 mark now, and we do have a whole bunch of questions on the chat box and hands raised, but unfortunately, we'd not be able to take them today.
Sir, quickly, if you can answer in as short time as possible, we will just read out the questions. If you allow us,
is comfortable.
Professor Saab, if you allow us another 5, maybe 10 minutes. I know we are going beyond your time, sir. Oh, thank you.
Okay, yeah, sure. If it's just 5 minutes, that's good. Go ahead.
Awesome. So
we will quickly ask the question, and you can quickly, in few words possible, you can answer.
Sure.
We can move on to the next question as well.
Awesome. So I think most of the questions are repetitive, so I'll just ask the ones that I think have not already been talked about. This one's from Mukesh, sir. He's asking, do you think the ghost of post-facto taxation really buried, and this fear does not keep the investors at bay?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't follow it.
Do you think the ghost of post-facto taxation really buried, and this fear does not keep the investors at bay?
Yeah,
the fear of tax, basically.
Okay. Yeah, taxation is a very big issue with foreign investors. It's a huge issue because it impacts their IRR. And if the host government is not transparent vis-a-vis its tax rules, that causes lots and lots of issues to the investors. One of the main reasons that the pension funds from the US, who control trillions of dollars in liquidity, are not able to come to India it's the tax regime and the confusion that we have within the taxation system. And we kicked up a lot of bad publicity as a result of the Vodafone deal and the Ken deal and several other deals, and where we had de facto taxes levied and imposed on foreign companies, on post facto basis and so on and so forth. So I think if we can clean up and keep our taxation system simple and straightforward, and I think the new tax rules that the new prime minister, I think new finance minister has announced, is 15%. It's is obviously sounds pretty attractive to me, but that's only, I think, applicable for manufacturing activity. So I think they're more transparent and simple. The rules are, I think, we can quadruple the the capital inflows into the country, especially FDI, which basically is long-term type of investment.
Thank you. The next question is from Sanjay. So he's asking, what do you think about the rip and replace business models from USA to India?
I'm sorry, which business model?
Rip and replace. So like Ola, Uber, DoorDash, Swiggy. What do you think about that?
So basically, the question is it how? What do you think of the people who just copy the business model of US? And
there's no harm in copying a business model. Why not? I mean, if it's applicable, I don't see any issues with that. So, I mean, the DoorDash model has been adopted by Zomato. DoorDash had a market, I think, valuation of, I don't know, some ridiculous amount, 70 billion or something. And so, but there's absolutely no problem in replicating some of these business models. It's a question, I think the issue is around execution and market sizing and customer behavior. So, I mean, if you have your arms around that, there's absolutely no problem in replicating those models. I don't see any problem with that at all.
Thank you. So this next question, Pallavi.
Yeah, this one's from Atul sir. He's asking, is this a good time for Indian angel networks to go overseas and tap into startup pools, provide opportunity for Indian investors to invest overseas, or should we focus on India only?
So Professor Sawhney, Atul here.
Hi Atul, how are you?
Good. It's been a couple of months since we spoke. No, yeah. But I have been on calls with some of the networks with talking to German startups and I think Dutch startups and all. And there is always that inhibition in terms of what is the credibility of the startup, right? Because you don't know the language, you don't know the country. So I think the question is that is there an opportunity for us to look at outside India and rather focus on India? Number one. And number two, if you were to focus on, let's say, US or European markets, right? What is the lens you should use to evaluate those startups, right? Because in India, it's easier for us to figure out that, okay, someone is Bangalore, even though with LinkedIn and, everyone being on the social media, you can check out the founder, but, there is still a little bit of a discomfort in terms of, going across the boundaries, right? So just want to get your perspective.
Yeah. So you're saying for an Indian to invest in a startup abroad?
Yes. Indian angel networks going abroad, right? And tapping into startup pool from those countries. Is this a good time or what's your perspective on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the angel network, if they have the requisite funding to write checks expeditiously, the due diligence piece can always be outsourced very easily, in sophisticated markets like US and Europe and so on and so forth. So you don't require some unique skill set to due diligence those companies. The startups that you see in the US are more transparent and a lot more easier to dissect and bisect and evaluate than the startup that you have here in India. So I would seriously, yes, surely encourage you, the angel networks to go abroad, and provided they have the necessary gumption, they have sizable resources at their command. whatever little I've known of some of the angel networks here, I think they sometimes take just too long to make decisions, and I think they're not so well equipped to actually vet these deals and structure these deals. I think they lack training. I think that is the area they should really be working on. Is improving the quality of the vetting process and structuring the deals, and that I think is definitely that requires attention. But there's absolutely no harm in looking at startups abroad, and the vetting process is relatively a lot more simpler than it is here, because you can, as I said, due diligence those startups by outsourcing some of those pieces at minimal cost.
So get the local expertise to evaluate.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And what about the founders? Is there a different lens we have to look at to screen the founders, whether we India versus, let's say, a US or a?
No. There's no different lens. No, absolutely not.
Great.
You know, I sit on many networks, angel networks in the US, and the founders there are superior, high quality.
Great.
Far superior than the ones that we have in India, unfortunately. I think there is the training piece, in my opinion, both for founders and for VCs and for intermediaries, I think is the order of the day. I think we need to really work very hard on that piece.
Thank you.
Great. So we have this question from Mr. Nishant Vora. Last question I would take. This is unique on crypto, blockchain. Your viewpoint on crypto, blockchain, metaverse.
I don't know anything about crypto. Don't ask me. I don't believe in crypto. I don't invest in crypto. So I'm not an expert on crypto. It's
Thank you.
It's beyond me, frankly. I've tried my best. I haven't been able to get my arms around it. So
next question you already answered, sir, from Mayank Rana, that agri-tech. So you said that agri-tech is the future. That's the first industry you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think India, is positioned extremely well in the agri-tech side. I mean, there's just so much to be done on agri-tech in India. You could completely transform the agriculture sector, through the VC vehicle.
So next question is from Dr. Divakar. He is asking, there is a lot of FOMO going on, fear of missing out in investments. When do you think it will correct, and is this the bubble? Will it burst? That's the question.
There's no bubble.
Absolutely.
No
bubble at all.
This is for real. But escalation, I mean, the valuations could be sometimes flawed and escalated and exaggerated, but it's not a bubble.
Not a bubble. Absolutely.
You have to find the right founders. That is a hard nut to crack in India, by the way. So if you can crack that, you should move speedily to close the deal.
Great.
Okay.
So with your viewpoint, is there any difference between US investors and Indian investors in terms of evaluating a startup?
Lot of difference. I think we have a long way to go. And I think because there's no formal training that is being imparted, as I said, to the investing community, founders, intermediaries, and bureaucrats and regulators. I think we are suffering, and we need to really spend time and effort. I mean, I don't know who has to spearhead this, but if there is a course being offered at Columbia for 9 months in venture capital and private equity, and the expensive course is $28,000. But that's something to look at. Or you could, just do a more inexpensive course, but it'd be a good idea, I think, to go abroad to acquire these skills, because I'm not sure if there's enough resource available within the country at this point of time, or whatever is there. I think people who understand this art form, I think, are too busy making money. They don't have time to teach. Okay.
So this the final question in the chat from Mr. Manoj Raju. Technology seems to skip a generation in India. For example, we went directly to UPI before credit card, debit card were mainstream. What is your recommendation for entrepreneurs solving from India? Do we solve the global problem, or should we be more focused on India's today's problem?
I love UPI. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, sir. So definitely,
I think we should pin a medal to the government official or the set of government officials or the ministry that spearheaded this movement. UPI has single-handedly transformed, the digital payment mechanism in the country, and it's something to be really proud of. And it doesn't really matter what comes first. So, just get it done.
So we must
That's
thank
it.
Rajan.
We don't have to be, perfect. Some imperfection is better. That's our problem in India. We'd like to be perfect. So
yes,
no need to be perfect.
We don't need to be perfect. That's what I always say to my team as well. Thank you for
make some mistakes. If you have to make some mistakes,
you have to make some mistakes. Thank you.
No problem.
So one last hand raised by Dr. Divakar. If Dr. Saab, if you can switch on your video and ask the last question, because we have taken much extra time of Professor Saab. Dr. Divakar, I think he can't unmute. I think you have to unmute him. Pallavi, yeah, sorry. Pallavi or Prachi, can you unmute?
Thank you very much, Professor Sawhney. My limited point was, you also raised this point, and this is what we are seeing, and we've already seen it in Paytm, and you've seen it in WeWork in the US. The point is, you see, it's the VCs who fuel this fire of higher valuations. How and when do you expect, and this is all fueled by FOMO, so how do you think that this is going to be corrected, and when? Because the day it gets
it will not be corrected because of excessive liquidity. There is just too much liquidity, sir, in the market right now, or has been. And because there is so much liquidity, and all these funds, have to justify their existence, and otherwise that money will be taken away from them. They will lose their management fees and their 20% carry. So they have to invest the money. And if the company is expensive, they are willing to write that check. And there's nothing that you and I can do about it. It's a market phenomenon worldwide, and it's incapable of being corrected. And so I agree with you that, I brought that up myself. That I gave you the example of that clubhouse valuation myself. That how ridiculous that was. The company's valuation, went up to $3 billion when the response rate has gone down. So yes.
I think even as I'm taking totally to a different path, but it explains a lot. Just comparing apple and oranges for now, but common public is the common key in this example. Two films just released. One is 83 and one is Pushpa. Pushpa is hardcore, like a South Indian masala film, and still did so well because there was a substance in the film. There was masala. And 83, on the other hand, it's only based on cricket. Didn't do anything at all. So public do understand what they are going for, whether it's films or whether it's investments as well. Your gut feeling tells you that. But if you're going with FOMO, I don't know what's the answer. You should go with your gut feeling, whether this product can work, whether this company can work, whether this startup can work or not. And I think we all have the answers for that. We just don't have to go with
completely agree with you, Dhianu sir.
Thank you.
Completely agree with you on that one.
Just go with your gut feeling. I always go with my gut feeling. I go against all odds. And I have learned that.
I think before we terminate the session, I have a recommendation. I want to recommend 2 books. Just 1 second.
That'd be so nice. So, I mean, personally, I have gone against my best and the biggest investment I have made is Go Mechanic, rejected by almost 150 people. Absolutely rejected. Founder came to me after taking some money. Sir, are you sure you want to invest in us? And my question was, serious? You were asking me that question,
So, there are these 2 books that I want to recommend. There's this book here. It's called The Four. And the writer of this book is Scott Galloway. Okay. He's a finance professor. I think he's a professor at Stern School of Management, New York University.
Sure.
Scott Galloway is a very well-known professor in the United States, and he has a podcast as well. And I would recommend that you should probably, via the podcast app, listen to his podcast, on a regular basis. But you must buy this book. It's called The Four. And it's the hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google.
Wow.
It's a must-read book. And the second book, I think, which I had recommended to Chinmaya, which he bought, is this book called The Business of Venture Capital. You should buy this book and read it. It's an easy read. And before you start investing any money, I think you would be so much better off. And with that, I will ask for your...
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for giving us time. We started our last year, 2021, with your lecture, and it went so well for us. Agility moved from 250 to now 1,600 investors. And this year also, we wanted to start with you. Thank you for giving us your time, sir. And really, I learned a lot from today's chat. A lot of my questions are answered. And I hope same for all the investors. Thank you once again, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.